Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the first episode of the second series of the second season of the Revenue Manager. My name is Enzo Aita, and on behalf of Hospitality Net and Funnel TV, I'm very glad to welcome you to this new exciting series. How are you guys? How are you, Harry, Scott, Chris, Diego, Federica? All good?
Excellent.
Very well.
Ready.
Cool.
We are
That's
looking
great.
forward. We are looking forward to the next part of our journey, Enzo.
That's amazing. Would you like to spend a couple of words, Harry, about this series? After the first, last year, which had a great success, now we are coming back again. So tell us a little bit more about it.
You know, we definitely had a blast last year with our first season, and I think we were a great team in putting that together with all the help from everyone, specifically from Scott. Thank you very much. This was really great, and as you might have seen, we rebranded a little bit the revenue managers to be part of the Summit series, which is basically a broader initiative at Hospitality Net, where we will be covering additional topics in a similar format. And those, so apart from revenue management, we will be talking about distribution with Peter O'Connor, and on the next gen tech stack, everything around PMS and what connects with PMS. And we're doing that with Simone. So those will be an additional 12 episodes on top of the 8 episodes that we are doing with the revenue manager. So, and given the numbers that we got so far in terms of registrations only for this event, we're very happy where we are.
That's amazing. Hi, Chris. Hi, Federica and Scott. Some words from you before we start. Federica.
I go. Yeah, I'm very excited that we are starting again this journey. I think that we are ready. We have packed. We are ready to take off. And I want to welcome everybody, also the audience. I see already familiar faces, and I want to say hello and welcome to everybody. I see Pablo and all the others. So tell us where you are connected from, and we are very excited. And I want to leave the word to the other and not to steal space to our speakers later.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm super excited to be here and to have contributed to organizing this wonderful series kickoff today. Every month we will come back, so it's going to be really, really cool. Thank you everybody for being here.
Fantastic. Diego, what about you? I know you are not in Europe, man. We cannot hear you. Maybe we pass the word to Scott.
Well, I tell you, Enzo, I'm also super excited about the series this year. I think we learned a little bit from last year, and I think we put in some improvements. One of the ones which we'd love to see is have people continue to give us their input. Some of the great questions that we were able to deal with during the panel were live questions. Also, keep your eye out for the opportunity to share your opinion. We have a little montage of a couple of opinions that were shared regarding this first topic, but that's one of the features that Henry and Hospitality Net have added. So keep an eye out for that, and give us that 30 or 45 seconds of what your thoughts are about the topics going forward. So looking forward to it.
Diego, you can speak now. No, we are still in mute, man. I think in Punta Cana, where you are sitting now, they need a better Wi-Fi, probably. Anyway, so let's look quickly. This clip we prepared to see which are the speaker of the day, and then we can discuss a little bit more about it. Right, so a lot of stuff, guys. So many people a lot of people are connecting from everywhere in the world. And so at this point, I think I should leave the word to you, Scott. You have a great challenge to manage great speakers today. A very hot conversation. Actually, let me tell you a quick story. It's going to be fun. So there are 3 guys, 3 friends, a sales guy, a revenue and marketing. So they go out for lunch, for a business lunch. And then at some point, so they end the lunch, the bill is coming, the waiter is bringing the bill. And the revenue guy picked that up and start after making his calculation, typical from a revenue, and see the bill and say, okay, this is $186. It's three of us. We have to pay $62 average per hit. And the marketing guy say, well, to be honest, I was expecting a lower price. They provided very bad services and the product was so bad. So they should expect a bad review. And the sales guy say, wait, I'm going to talk to the GM of the restaurant and ask him to review the bill. And I'm going to make him an offer he can't refuse. So that's the funny story of the three professionals who are given the hard task to, align this team of commercial. And of course, who is going to pay the bill? So words to use, Scott. Let's see the clip of the panel and let's start to key that.
So thank you, Enzo, very much. I'm excited about today's panel. I think this, as you can tell by the amount of response that we got to the topics, for example, amazing amount of interest and definitely a kind of a hotly contested topic that people like to talk about. So before we get started with it, though, let me introduce the panel because we've got a super group of people. I think really interesting one to address this topic. First of all, Sloan Dean, welcome. Sloan is CEO of Remington Hotels. But Sloan, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thank you. Great to see everybody and be here. So Sloan Dean, CEO and President of Remington Hotels. We're a U.S.-based third-party hotel operator. We operate 90 hotels, mostly full service and resorts across the U.S. We're in 27 states and are, depending how you measure it, the 6th or 7th largest manager in the U.S. I grew up on the commercial side, so I was a revenue manager, and then I was a VP of sales, and then I was a SVP of commercial services, and then ultimately a chief commercial officer. So if you're wondering, of a path through commercial to eventually CEO and president, I've been fortunate enough to live that. So, but we've got about 7,000 employees in the company and growing, and I'm super excited to be here.
Awesome. Thanks, Sloan. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to your perspective as your pedigree is revenue, but now you see a much bigger picture. So I look forward to talking about that a little bit more. Our next guest is a repeat guest on the Revenue Manager series, but I think probably many people know Kelly McGuire. But Kelly, tell us about yourself and tell us about what you're doing now at ZS.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Scott. Thanks, everyone, for having me. Looking forward to a robust and dynamic discussion today. So my name is Kelly McGuire. I am a managing principal over hospitality at ZS. We are a mid-sized global consulting firm, about 11,000 employees worldwide. We serve a variety of industries, and my remit is our hospitality clients. We uniquely, I think, among our peers, pretty much exclusively focus on solutions, services, strategies for the commercial function. And so I'm able to leverage kind of learnings from across all of the industries we serve to bring innovative solutions to our hospitality clients. Like Sloan, my background is in revenue management, although a lot of my career has been focused on the technology analytics data that supports the revenue management function. And so I'm delighted to be here to participate in this discussion.
Thanks, Kelly. Kelly is sometimes humble, or sometimes she just runs out of time when she talks about herself. But the revenue position she's referring to, among others, was Chief Revenue Officer at MGM at one point. So welcome, Kelly. Great to have you, and great to have your perspective. And finally, Neil Kaur. First of all, Neil, Director of Emerging Innovations. Amazing title. You're on the panel immediately. But also tremendous track record prior to getting involved with ideas in the hands-on part of the commercial function. So tell us a little about yourself and tell us about what you do at Ideas now.
Yes, I've been with Ideas just under a decade now. Prior to that, about 20 years in a variety of operational, sales, marketing, and revenue management roles. When I joined Ideas as a consultant heading up the EMEA region, I got to work on a lot of very interesting projects. But in the last couple of years, as Ideas has sort of diversified, so we're pretty ubiquitous, as you know, in the revenue management space. But the role has given me great opportunities to network with academics like yourselves and C-suite like Sloan and Kelly, who I've met at many events and heard speak. So I've been the beneficiaries of their wisdom over the years. The last couple of years, as Ideas has moved into different verticals, I've been looking into mobility, revenue management, and more recently in the financial forecasting and planning space as well. So really looking forward to today's panel, and thanks for the opportunity.
Awesome. Thanks, Neil. Thanks all you guys for joining us and giving us your time. So Sloan, I'm going to put you on the spot, man. We're going to start out with you. Like of all the panelists, you're the one directly in the position to make the decision. I mean, this whole thing is kicked off by the opinion who's going to lead the commercial team, sales, marketing, or revenue management, and you're theoretically in the position to make that decision today if you had to. So first, I'm going to put you on the spot for a single answer. Then I'm going to let you wiggle out of your answer with a little more of the detail after that. So what would it be, Sloan?
Well, if you look at who leads my commercial services at Remington, our chief commercial officer came from revenue management. Now, my answer has changed over the years, even though I'm a revenue manager by background. And I think it would be summed up as who has the best behavioral economics mind with the best leadership skills across multiple disciplines. But in our organization, our chief commercial officer, most of his career was spent in revenue management.
Thank you. Thanks. And thanks for this. Thanks for the straight answer. It's a tough one. So now, Neil, I'm going to ask you the same question, right? Put you on the spot a little bit. And then I think we've all figured out there's some sort of a central answer that's not as easy as a multiple choice question. But what are your thoughts on the topic, Neil?
I suppose as a classic English diplomat, I'd probably defer to other people and question the questioner. So because it's quite a polarizing and binary kind of selection, and I think it would be hypocritical to pinpoint a certain discipline that's best that would best lend itself to that conversation. I think some of my best mentors have been people I've found in the strangest places. I think, to echo what Sloan said, I think putting yourselves in the hands of a great mentor and somebody that recognizes instinctively your skill set. So that's going to really vary from company to company. And again, in my role, I've had the benefit of working with, hundreds and hundreds of different companies where I've observed different decision-making criteria. So I'd say ask me another question.
All right, so totally Teflon, dude. All right, so Kelly, I'm counting on you now. That's but I mean, let me ask you the same question. But I think I know where you're coming from.
Yeah. No, I mean, listen, the person who should lead the commercial function is the best leader, because this is a role, especially when we're bringing all these siloed disciplines together, where you need someone who can lead. You need a strategist, you need a communicator, and to Sloan's point, someone who really understands the mindset of the consumer and that behavioral economics mindset, and knows how to inspire a team, pull everyone together, and lead. And I think ideally, you'd have someone who was exposed to at least all of the disciplines with some specialty, in one of them. But I just, given where we are in industry today, and if we're going to make this shift successfully and break down those silos, we need leaders. We need leaders. So that's my answer. All of the above / none of the above. How about that?
Agreed. I totally agree. And I think you made a really interesting point, which is exposure, and the ability to understand the three disciplines. Maybe not spend your whole life in one of them and be a master of one, but the ability to kind of to be an empathetic leader. And Sloan, I think in a second we're going to take a look at what the poll results were, because we asked I had an online poll that matches this. But you're a developer. I mean, Remington is large enough that it develops its own people, and you mentioned a lot about promoting people from within and things like that. But how do you theoretically get the right people the exposure so that they can sort of move through their career and be ready for the kind of stuff that we're talking about?
Well, if you look at any, if you aspire to be a CCO or a CEO or a COO, you look at the background of most of those people, they tend to have a lot more broad background. And what ends up happening is, so I went to school for engineering and finance. All my friends who were engineers, they continue to get all these certifications, get paid more money, but then they cap out within their discipline. of expertise, and they're not broad enough to be able to move into a C-suite role. And I think, what we are doing here at Remington specifically is that we need to have people that, yes, maybe they grew up in revenue management and they are tactically very good at that job and functionally very good. But you don't want somebody to get promoted to the point that then they can't go lead sales, or they can't go lead digital marketing, or they can't be the CCO. And so I think what a lot of companies that have scale should be doing are a commercial development program, meaning you're a revenue manager for a couple of years. You have the ability to then go be a VP of sales potentially. You then have the potential to go be in digital marketing and have a career path that gets you more broad experience. And I think that only happens when you have a chief commercial officer that can lead all those functions. But it is not common, because a great revenue manager doesn't translate to a great sales leader. And so I think that's where, to Kelly's point, and the point I was making, that you've got to have some aptitude testing that, yes, basic analytical ability, but then also basic leadership skills and developing that. In school, nobody taught you about personal finance, right? If you look at the U.S. educational system, one of the most important things we don't teach for. Well, in business, we have all these certification programs. You can go to Cornell to get an asset management concentration or revenue management. We need to have a big focus on leadership. So we actually have a programmatic executive coaching program here that for anybody who is a manager or higher title, that you go into a executive leadership so that we can groom you to become a CCO, a COO. And I think that's really missing and is unfortunate in a lot of other organizations. But there's got to be a program to get you exposure to all those disciplines like Kelly's talking about. But then you also have to coach people up from a leadership perspective, because what you often find is your tactical, great individual contributor ends up being a terrible manager. If you've ever seen Simon Sinek speak, he talks about people that are really good at an individual job get promoted to the point of manager. Well, then they micromanage the people below them because they were better at that job than the people underneath them. And so, but that's not a good leader. It doesn't scale. And so if you want to be a good CCO, just being a good revenue manager is not good enough. You got to be able to motivate and educate and lead sales, digital marketing, and revenue management. And it's a different skill set, and you got to coach for that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think you make a great.
Scott, if I could just add to that, because
please.
Just kismet really, because I was listening to a Simon Sinek podcast the other day, and he talks a lot about authenticity, which I think is often really, really neglected. Often the best leaders I've looked up to that have progressed me as an individual are people that just get how to be humble and get how to be authentic. So I think there's a huge amount, and I think a lot of our political leaders could take a leaf out of that book as well.
There you go. Sloan, I tell you what, we're going to get towards the end. We're going to talk a little bit about advice for people in their career. And I think one of the ones that you would be really, really well equipped to give is how to be a good mentee, right? How do you attract a mentor? But I know you're a big proponent of coaching, and you're very open about your own personal coaching in some cases that you get. And so give us a 30-second commercial on that for people that don't know that story, if you wouldn't mind.
Well, if I rewind the tape I had joined the parent. So we're a publicly held entity. Our parent company, I actually joined as a VP almost 9 years ago. And when I started, I was leading revenue for a large owner entity. And it was very apparent to me that if I wanted to rise within the company, that I had very sharp elbows and very sharp opinions, and I need to round that out. And I'll never forget my first 360. This was probably 8 years ago. And it said, Sloan is very, very intelligent. He'll run through a brick wall for the job, but he'll back the bus up over you to get it done. And I thought, wow, and then I remember my executive coach telling me, Sloan, everyone's smart once you get to a certain level. Being analytical is not a key differentiator. It's a competency to get into the game. Mm-hmm. And I've kept that with me. And I think so often when you hear people who are great revenue managers say, well, revenue management should be leading commercial. And my argument is, well, yeah, the angry revenue manager that thinks they should be leading the group or is ultimately is the worst chief commercial officer, because they get up there and they have authoritarian tendencies and they micromanage. And the reason there's a lot of organizations that still have commercial services led by sales is because sales spent their entire life persuading customers. And so the sales skills transfer to leadership a little bit better. And, if you want to be a chief commercial officer, you have to round out those sharp elbows and realize that once you get up to higher levels, you've got to have teamwork, a sense of humility and empathy that is genuine. And I tell you, it's been, I call it going to confession when I go to, I still get executive coaching every month because success is not final. And I think for any of us that are very A-type, that's a good check and balance. But it's been the number one thing that has allowed me to rise to CEO and president, was that recognizing that being smart or analytical was just a competency, and that I needed to really focus on my communication and leadership more than at my tactical knowledge.
Yeah, I think that you make a great point that harsh revenue manager profile, might be able to communicate the way owners want to hear communication, straightforward about information and things like that. But then all of a sudden you're managing that function and it doesn't work to be that harsh gatekeeper anymore, because you'll pretty much you'll run through those people like a hot knife through butter, basically. And for those of us that have managed the whole function, that without that group producing the revenue that it can produce, it's very difficult to be successful on your own. So so really it certainly creates a lot of empathy if you don't have it by the time you get there, once you get into that role. Enzo, let's have some fun here. Do me a favor, share with us the results of the survey, and let's take a look and see what the survey said, and we'll talk about that. Okay, so wow, resoundingly revenue management. And Kelly, I'm going to ask you this time, because it's Enzo, I'm going to ask you to play the video clips that we have in a second. But Kelly, let me ask you. To me, this seems a little bit, because this is the more difficult of today's skills, but it's not necessarily the most difficult of tomorrow's skills. And therefore, if you got here because of this skill set, you better continue to evolve, or it may be a temporary visit. So what are your thoughts on that?
Look, I wonder if this was bias in the sample as a statistician, but we can move past that.
64% of the respondents are revenue managers, Kelly.
Yeah, there you go. So then it's logic.
Look, he's not voting for Christmas.
That said, I mean, look, there's this revenue mindset is something that we have been talking about in hospitality, and certainly in revenue management, that's critically important for the whole organization to adopt. Like, what is our goal here? It's profitable revenue generation. And, the revenue manager is typically seen as the owner of that data and that capability. And so it seems natural as we evolve to commercial, that that revenue mindset that sits with the revenue manager should lead. So I guess I would agree with the spirit of this discussion, that, we still have to have that strong rev gen mindset and culture across the organization. So, the spirit of that is there, but I couldn't echo against what Sloan said, more about it's if you're myopic in your view when you come into this role from any of these disciplines, and start micromanaging across, your favorite discipline, you're not going to be successful. So again, it's leadership skills, and it's the soft and people skills. And I think Sloan would say the same thing. The further up I grew in my organizations, as I got out of the day-to-day, my goal, I was doing more people and organizational work than revenue management work anymore. And so my goal is to get the smartest possible, best possible, better than me revenue managers ready for today's revenue management and all of those leadership goals, because I wasn't doing that anymore. And so you do have to let go of some of those capabilities while still having that broader understanding of how it works. So anyway, I think the spirit of that response, where we want that culture of, we understand what revenue management is and why it's important, I would agree with. But I'm back to, as long as that's a leader that will be leading that organization, then that should be the goal.
So before we move on, Neil, I'm going to ask you actually, and the reason I want to ask you is because you're doing something slightly different now, but you have all of these titles in your background, and so I would imagine they're probably still relevant today. And is there any way you can kind of share anecdotally how it, how you still use the stuff from when you had revenue and distribution in your title, for example?
I think the thing that's really surprised me in the past, because I bumped into Kelly in Dubai in December. We were at an HSMAI event, and it occurred to me we've been sort of talking about total revenue management for it felt like about 30 years. I didn't realize I was that old. But I think
it was shocking to me too, Neil. Your math is probably right.
But it kind of came back to the sort of empathy point, and I think a big thing for me is recognizing your shortcomings. So probably part of the reason Sloan's grown to the role he has is because it's a specific mindset that says I'm not very good at something, and like to Kelly, to your point, find someone that's better than you, or you don't always have to be the smartest person in the room, but you have to construct the team that will bring you there. So I think what we found within Ideas, for example, is that speaking in a sort of revenue management silo for the best part of 30 years and recognizing that most of our VPs of revenue that we were talking to, if they're honest, they didn't really have sort of that broad commercial oversight in terms of revenue managing anything beyond rooms. So I think that's forced us to really change the way we speak to commercial C-suite, to finance personas, and it's really changed the dynamic. And I think I had a bit of a departure for a couple of years working in the airport mobility space, looking at things like meetings and events revenue management, some really sort of complex areas of the business, and more in recent times trying to develop and learn a whole different cadence with sort of financial planning and analysis teams. So that's been really quite humbling in many respects, but also for me, it's really answered the question as to the reason we didn't have total revenue management is because we didn't really admit that we didn't know what we were doing in some of those areas. So I think the convergence of technology, working for obviously a solution provider in the technology space, my colleague Klaus always makes the point as well that the convergence of people has actually been probably one of the most transformative things I've observed. And from a personal standpoint, you're doing so many different roles and having that space to be able to be creative and do different things. I think that's where that's where I'm coming from.
Cool. All right. So thanks. So let's take a look. We've got a couple of interesting opinions that were shared on video. So Enzo, why don't you roll those for us real quick, and we'll talk about those when we get back.
Any leader must have a strong understanding of the soft skills, relationships, empathy, critical thinking. They need to be humble and an open listener. A commercial leader needs to be analytical, but not solely driven by data. They need to be a risk taker, but know how to fail fast and gracefully. They need to read consumer trends based on qualitative data, not opinions in a boardroom. Although any of the three disciplines are qualified, I believe it will first be dominated by revenue leaders, but the future commercial leaders will come from digital marketing, as they truly understand consumer psychology, the sales funnel, data analytics, pricing, and how to drive revenue.
Who will lead the new commercial team? It's going to be absolutely the revenue management team, the revenue management department, and people who graduate from the revenue management discipline, because those are the only people essentially who have access to data, and people who are data oriented and who understand how to use technology and how to read data. And that's essential to ensure that the whole organization is synchronized and the strategy is efficient.
The commercial leader is the natural evolution of the revenue manager. This had already started years ago, but the fact that we are still discussing who will lead the commercial team of Dutel at this moment in time, it means that something is missing. From my perspective, we should clear the skill set of the revenue manager first. It is not just about data and analytics, and we should give more importance to skills like leadership, communication, and vision. Because when these skills are missing, they cannot be learned. So we really start recruit, train, and develop based on these skills, and break the biases around the role of the revenue manager being just about that crunching.
Okay, so cool. So a couple of interesting comments in there. Actually, I thought Steve Rubin's comment was interesting about it evolving, about it potentially being a moving target. And I actually think I subscribe to that a little bit. I think that, Sloan, you mentioned the price of entry when we were talking about something else. And I think if you were in revenue 10 years ago, you grew up with data and you started out with a star report, which is 25 or 30 data points, and now it's 10 pages. And so you little by little learn to deal with more. And so maybe you're better prepared for the data environment that kind of has exploded on us today. But I'm not sure that it's necessarily enough to rest on your laurels. So I mean, what do you guys think? Anybody have any thoughts on that? And then we'll move on.
I think to jump in, I used to think similar when I was growing up in the business, but I think so that was my own ego getting in the way. I come back to, if you ever hear great athletes or great leaders talk about who they competed against, there's a great Instagram of Kevin Hart, the comedian, where he talks about pardon my French, he just says, "I fucking beat me." And I think there is a lot of that that you need to forget about. It's this discipline that sets me up for success. It really is exposure to all three. It's also understanding consumer mentality and consumer behavior shifting. And it really comes back to that leadership quality. I still, to this day, now I do think that some of the data orientation of traditional revenue management, or what I would refer to today as revenue optimization, sets someone up for success. But that I've often found the jaded revenue manager to be really bad leaders. And so I think it really can be all three. I don't think there's an answer. And I think we're thinking too binary. Business often happens in the gray. And I think the answer is you can have a concentration in any of the three. You can grow up in any of the three. And as long as you've had exposure to all three and have the best leadership and the best mind, you can make an argument if you grow up in revenue management that if you're too concentrated in one area, it actually creates a bias in your thinking. And so that's where, I'm a pretty young CEO. I like to think that is a benefit because I'm not saddled with 35 years of experience. I don't just say, well, that's the way we've done things. It affords new thinking. And so I think, sure, some of the leaders will come from marketing, digital marketing. Some will come from revenue optimization, and some will still come from sales. And I think that should be the answer. I think thinking about it in a binary way is too closed-minded. And also, when you think about who you're competing against, you should just be competing against yourself. Mm-hmm. And you should be making decisions in your career to if you want to be a chief commercial officer, it shouldn't be about how much more money you make this year. There were multiple occasions in my career that I took a lateral move with no pay increase intentionally to get, and I can point to two different times. One was to go lead sales, and then one was to go lead business development for M&A. And I did both, and I actually made a little less money than if I had just stayed on the revenue management track. And I think you have to have that. If you want to be a CCO, it is that exposure to all. And I think the leader can come from any of the disciplines.
Cool. That's perfect. Sorry, go ahead, Tyler.
I was just going to say, I was picking up on as Sloan was talking, which, I 1,000,000% agree with him on competing with yourself. But there was an interesting point brought up. I think Claudia echoed it in the comments. But, if you're about the role of technology in evolving any of these roles, and I think there is a crucial point here where, we keep talking about the revenue manager as being, a data cruncher and a report builder and owning the data and the analytics. But there is much better, stronger automated technology today to support the revenue manager's function, but also digital marketing and sales. And so if you want to lift yourself or lift everyone out of the weeds here, you have to acquire the technology and actually use it. And I think this is going to be the key for any of these folks that are hungry to evolve to the next level and have their eye on that C-suite C-suite chair, like, you know, you have got to lift yourself out of the weeds. You've got to take advantage of the technology that's there that will enable you that evolution from a tactician to a strategist. And so I just wanted to make sure that we raised that very good point that was brought up both in the LinkedIn comments and in the video, that, you know, we've got the technology today, so freaking use it. Get yourself out of the weeds and start building strategy.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's actually, it's kind of the perfect springboard into the next question. And so, Neil, I'm going to ask you, let's blow up the silos and the titles and the preconceived notions. In your role, you constantly interact with all kinds of commercial leaders, and you know, both at the property level, above the property level, multiple disciplines, now some new industries even. Are there any specific traits that make people stand out? I mean, is there anything that you think is you know, something that if I have this, I should probably go in this direction because it has value?
Yeah, I think what I've noticed is dealing with. I'm quite fortunate now in a global role, although the time zones are getting me down a little bit. But a lot of the dynamic companies that we're working with, you know, many in the States where we're trying to roll out innovative new technology, are really responding well to, you know, this isn't just a sales guy from a vendor or a partner that we're already working with, but also just being really honest about what a solution might look like. You know, vaporware, middleware, is it a widget, is it a plugin, and just having the authenticity to say, I know this is a unique pain in your business at the minute. You're looking at, I don't know, spa optimization or ways to optimize your tea times if you've got a golf resort. We can help with that. And it might not be in your purview, but it might mean talking to your CFO versus your CCO. So I think I've noticed much better response because within ideas, we've not typically sort of branched away and looked at those kind of overlay roles where we're talking to unique disciplines. So I think that's been great because I kind of have to be cognizant of relationships that have been developed over many years. I mean, you know, Sloan's Sloan's company, for example, when I was talking to his leaders, you know, very conscious that, you know, their time is very valuable. Am I trying to solve a pain, or am I just getting in the way a little bit? So I think taking the time and the point about training was really key as well. You're never too old to look at different ways of understanding your own solutions that you're offering, but also the approach and the cadence that you should take to certain individuals, because you know, you can't apply a broad brush approach. The common denominator being it's hospitality doesn't really wash anymore. You really need to do your discovery and your research before offering a solution to a pain that might not have been diagnosed properly.
So kind of in a follow-up to what Neil just said, Kelly, let me come back to you and ask you, if you don't mind. You mentioned adopting the technology, but let's say I'm not in a decision-making position to adopt technology beyond which telephone I choose to use. I'm at that point in my career. What does that mean to someone at that stage? Because it definitely has an implication, right? But how can they take advantage of it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, look, the reality is not everyone has control over these technology decisions, and so you know, to a certain extent, you have to work with what you have. So just, you got to make sure you are taking full advantage of what's there. But then I think you've got to find then other ways to expose yourself to the opportunity to develop that business acumen and strategic thinking. So even if you are not incentivized in your role, which, I mean, we haven't gotten to this yet, but incentive structures and org structures are a huge blocker towards the evolution to commercial function. But find ways to collaborate with your stakeholders to understand their data, their worlds, their strategy, to get a fuller picture of all of the levers that are available to pull, and just continue to just elevate yourself out of the weeds whenever you can. You know, so use what you have to the best available, but then seek out opportunities within your organization to be exposed to some disciplines and the way that they look at the world and the levers that they have to pull, and see if you can incorporate that into your own thinking, even if you're not incentivized, especially if you're not incentivized to do it.
Cool. Sloan, do me a favor. Talk about incentives. I mean, I think you're the perfect person to talk about it. But what are your thoughts on that? How do we make sure that we don't financially reward people to fight?
Well, I think ultimately we have to have that you have to have a chief commercial officer that oversees all functions, and the people that are overseeing sales, revenue optimization, digital marketing, distribution, if you have that function separate, all need to have the same incentives and be rowing together. Now, when you get down into lower tactical positions, on property sales, business transient sales, etc., having some breakdown in, so let's say the full bonus potential of that person is 30% of their base salary. There should be a portion of that is tied to the whole, and then have individual contribution goals within sales or within revenue management that's tied to maybe individual market share, for example. But I think you have to have alignment of whatever is most important, and that can be market share, it can be revenue to budget, it can be revenue to prior year, whatever is most important to that organization. It has to be consistent. And you have to, Jack Welch, the famous GE CEO, had it right. It was him saying something at the point of nauseam that it settled into the organization. And I think your commercial function has to have that exact. You can't have a head of
he froze in the perfect evangelical. You froze in perfect.
We'll never know.
You were making it was really magical. Go ahead and finish that up. You froze.
The commercial gods were jumping in, I guess.
Yeah, I agree. Comp is such a huge thing, right? Because it's almost one of those. You can talk about not having any silos, but if your comp doesn't align with that, it's like what you say. He's completely drowned it out by the way you're acting right now. So I think it's absolutely essential to make sure that those are aligned. So
I think can I just add, Scott? Sorry, I was just going to add a quick footnote to that, because something that's been really prevalent to me recently is that when you take a risk. So revenue managers by definition aren't particularly big risk takers, but when you're put back into a sales function and you're told, right, you're back on a 50-50 salary, or you're losing a company plan, that really tests you as an individual. So I would, as much as you can in the current climate, it's always, I think, when you test yourself and take yourself back into, from a revenue or commercial function into a sales function where your incentive and your comp plan is totally different. I think for certain individuals that can be a really good way to test yourself and see how you respond. Rather than maybe, I guess some of us in certain disciplines can be accused of a bit of complacency by sort of staying in safer roles where we kind of know what we're doing. So that whole comfort zone piece linked to comp and incentive is I think key as well.
Yeah, I after having been a revenue manager for quite a while at the property, I spent some time in sales. And I will tell you that I basically turned me into a revenue manager that completely abolished the word no from his vocabulary and replaced it with yes, but. Because I think it's unless you've done that job a little bit, it's something that you really have to prepare yourself from a mindset perspective. And the worst thing in the world is to come back to the hotel and have the smile wiped off your face. You get enough rejection in other places that I think it's essential that people have empathy in those positions in order to be able to lead. So unless anybody has anything else to say to that, we have a survey about silos, and so let's take a look and see what was the result. We asked, how do we break down the silos, and what were the answers? Okay, having the same head office. That's interesting based on everybody going so virtual. The same bonus goals we talked about. Obviously, great alignment on that. That was kind of nice that we talked about that before we pulled this up. My favorite one, though. Anybody have a comment? Who wants more meetings? That's going to make us more successful.
I mean, if people really want more meetings, Scott, they can have some of mine.
That's absolutely correct. Yeah, I mean, I think if you were to replace that with communication, then absolutely, right?
I think that's probably the intention there, right? Yeah.
I'm very hopeful, especially 16%, because that can't just be one person. There's no way the math works. So, anyway, all right. So really interesting. Let's kind of jump forward now, and Kelly, I'm going to put you on the spot. Mainly because just recently you spoke to my class and I mentioned something about being a futurist, and you correct me and you said you're in a futurist, you're a tomorrowist, which I thought was absolutely amazing. But do me a favor, like where's this going to go?
I mean, crystal ball, Scott, but except that's why I like being a tomorrowist, because the trend is already there. The crystal ball is clearer, right? I actually, given what the last 2 years have probably fast forwarded this thing that we've been talking about Neil, probably for just as long as we've been talking about Total Hotel, right? The integration of sales, marketing, and revenue management. I think we were fast forwarded by a decade just from the dismantling of the commercial organizations that happened in a lot of places. And so I do see this consolidation happening. And then the only thing that I really am concerned about is, are we cultivating leaders? And I think Sloan and I are in violent agreement on this one. And where are all of these folks who are increasingly, even, sales, marketing, and revenue management, all increasingly becoming more technical, more data oriented, more analytical? How are we cultivating those leadership skills? Because we're still going to face the same challenges, consolidated or not, about getting resources, about getting buy-in from operations, from executive leadership when we need to invest, and increasing competitive pressure to really perform in our markets. So yes, I think the consolidation is going to happen. I think it's the right thing for industry, but how will we ensure that it's that we are continuing to develop those soft skills? That's the thing that'll knock us back the 10 years that we gained from what just happened over the last 2.
Cool. And so Neil, how about you? I mean, how does tech and how do companies play a role in this? I mean, how are they involved in the whole evolution as well?
Yeah, I think we've tried to be, I think our biggest challenge is trying to be sort of autonomous and learning where we can collaborate better with different partners. I mean, we have over sort of 125 integration partners. And often we found the best successes on projects when we've brought in other people, because I think the challenge with a lot of revenue managers, if we're honest, and the comments will tell me otherwise, is the traditional approach has been that if your boss is the CEO or the CCO, it's really hard to admit that you don't know something. And if that means reaching out to an industry expert and collaborating on a project with a consultant, that can be an admission of guilt, or that you don't know something, which is crazy, because you think you wouldn't do that in typically in any other discipline of the business, where, if you work in a VC environment or for a publicly listed company, it's just part of due diligence, right? Reaching out to consulting teams and experts. Whereas I think because the revenue role has sort of evolved from pragmatic sort of reservations or front of house roles, it's kind of something that we've taken, or the revenue community has taken a long time to get to grips with, and broadening out your network. And again, like Kelly said, the last couple of years has made that so much easier. So I think in many respects, that's been a really, and looking to other sectors as well, because it's quite an insular, it's the only industry I've ever worked in. But often when I speak to my friends in, retail, or spending a lot of time pre-pandemic working in the airline sector, selling sort of mobility revenue management solutions, you're sitting in a meeting and going, well, where's the revenue analyst, and where's that? And it's not, no, it's just me. And to them, a 6-figure investment in a revenue management solution is a rounding error on a P&L. Whereas typically we've been, nickel and diming a lot of the revenue managers who just want to invest in some basic technologies.
That's thanks, Neil. It's a perfect setup. So now I'm going to go back to Sloan, right? So for the rooting us in reality. So Sloan, some of this stuff costs money, right? And I think if you own a hotel right now, unless you just recently bought it, you had better expectations than the yield you're probably getting today. And yet we're talking about investing in people, and we're talking about investing in emerging technology and all that kind of stuff. How hard of a sell is that when you're talking to an owner, and how do you, I mean, maybe that might be proprietary, the secret sauce, but how does that conversation go? How are you successful in getting them to see the need to invest?
Yeah. So if you look at hotels, the largest above GOP expense is labor. Below the line, most hotels spend more in property taxes and insurance and the cost of the mortgage. But having said that, it's the old adage of the CFO says to the CEO, what if we invest in all these people and they leave? And the CEO says, well, what if we don't and they stay? And I think you have to have that mentality when you're dealing with owners, particularly in a post-pandemic world. Listen, inflation is going to remain high for quite some time across the world. particularly in the U.S. because of the amount of money pumped in by the Fed. If you look at the operating model that is sustainable and to drive profitability long-term, particularly in the U.S., it is investment in technology to gain efficiency and productivity gains, and ultimately run hotels with less variable labor. It is then investment in your people so that they can do more. And what do I mean by that in commercial services? It is a commercial leader that has broader reach and more hotel responsibility, so more multi-unit responsibility. And so you effectively are paying someone more to be so it's great for career development, but you have less people. And so I think that's the name of the game is, you have to invest in your commercial leaders to be broader and to be ever educated. And at the same time, they may have more responsibility. And so, you basically get a cost savings due to less headcount. Now, mind you, I think one of the offsets, if you look at what is at least happening in the U.S., I can't speak internationally, nominal ADR in the U.S. has recovered. If you look at the month of March, the U.S. will post an ADR gain to 2019. Now, it doesn't fully account for inflation, but if you're gaining rate at 6-7% versus 2019 level, that can offset a lot of investment. And I think that's the way we sell it to our owners, is to say, listen, we have to be reinvesting in our people first and foremost. It's our biggest cost above gross operating profit. And if we want to be effective in today's environment, that's the first thing to do. Invest in technology to make your people more efficient, invest in training development to make them even better. And, I come back to that. The first thing I said is the scary thing is if you don't invest in your people and you have less of them post-COVID, that's a dangerous recipe, particularly as we're starting to see demand roar back. And I think by the summer, quite frankly, we're going to see U.S. RevPAR on a nominal basis will be back to 2019 levels. So
I think the first version of what you described is fewer, smarter people. And I think we learned that even when we started to cluster revenue management, quite a while ago, that the career growth opportunities it gave us were pretty cool, because if someone had 3 hotels and I gave them a 4th hotel because they had grown, I could afford to give them a pretty nice raise because the price per pound, if you will, of the coverage was actually going down at the same time that they could get a nice promotion without changing desks. And so I think that's the fewer, smarter people. The second version, fewer, dumber people. I think we can all figure out that's probably not going to yield a great result. So while you were talking about that incredible timing, there was a question about attracting and retaining those people, and I think you, for the most part, answered that question. But I actually wanted to just pose it to you directly. What's the secret to finding and keeping the people that can handle that incrementality and that growth?
So I encourage everyone to listen to Andrew Horowitz's podcast, as well as read some of his books. He's a famous VC investor in Silicon Valley, and he asks a question to every company you invest in: is what is your company culture? And he has this famous saying that says, "Culture eats strategy for breakfast." The strategy. Everybody in revenue management, sales, et cetera, are really tactical and focused on their job. But then we say, we got to have this strategy. Well, no, we have to have great culture. And so you have to have a commercial culture that eats strategy. And you have to have a company that is focused on, okay, you join me as a group housing manager or a basic revenue manager. I'm going to invest in you to teach you sales, to teach you marketing, so that you can replace my chief commercial officer in 10 years' time, and have that investment in people. And it has to be a very culture, a commercially centric culture that you have to join. Also, we have to pay people more. And so if you look at, where we're battling for talent, I'm paying people double digits more on a percentage basis in key commercial functions in a COVID world. I just may have less people. And so I think where we say, oh, well, the revenue manager historically made $90,000, you fast forward to a COVID world, we should be having a lot of 6-figure jobs in commercial functions. There just may be a less of them on a per normalized basis. And so we have to pay people more, incentivize them more, and also develop them more. But it starts with that, have a commercial culture, not a commercial strategy, commercial culture.
Yeah, I mean, I think in a way, COVID kind of gives us that reset button a little bit to look at it and put things back in place, knowing what we already know without the cost of dismantling what was there, right? That's already been incurred, unfortunately. And Kelly, let me ask you, the industry is littered with your mentees. And I know a current one, I've had a little bit of contact with one of your current ones in your current role, and they all have some common traits, right? Which is the I think that probably is the reason that they're a mentee in the first place. I think that's a spot that for those that don't understand it, that would be very much of a coveted spot to be mentored by you. So, like, what advice would you give somebody who's interested in kind of moving down this road relatively early on? You know.
Yeah, look, I go work for a company that shares Sloan's philosophy. That's the first advice I would give, right? I mean, you got to look at think about the culture of the firm that you're joining. You know, the opportunities. I mean, the industry is sitting at a super interesting point right now. The momentum. I mean, I know it was a terrible and really challenging couple of years, but we learned how to innovate rapidly. We learned how to be agile. We broke down some of our traditional assumptions and rebuilt them up again. And so, like, starting today, there's some really exciting things that could happen from here if only we don't let ourselves slide back into those bad habits. So, you know, if you're starting out in this industry today, don't settle for status quo in the company that you pick to work for. And if you're a company looking to attract new talent, don't be status quo. You know, we really have to challenge ourselves at this point. And I think, you know, you know, to Sloan's point, if these commercial leaders are gonna, there would be fewer of them doing more. You know, they need to be enabled with technology. So learn the technology, learn how to use those systems as decision support, and then just get yourself exposed to, you know, don't silo yourself either. You know, just reach out, work with your counterparts, and talk with other industry leaders, and just, you know, gain that. If your company's not giving you the exposure, go get it yourself. You know, but I think this is just, to me, it's a really exciting time. But as an industry, we've got to maintain the momentum. You know, the question of attracting talent, we've got to maintain the momentum. We have to make the right investments in the things that will support our people to do the right things, and we're probably gonna have to pay the best people more if we want to attract them back in. But I'm hugely optimistic about where we're gonna go.
And you know, here's what I'd say to people, and I was lucky enough to be afforded these opportunities early in my career. At your next annual review, instead of asking for just a above market raise or max bonus, ask to go work in a different area or oversee some project work in a different discipline. That, I know the breadth that I'm talking about is hard to come by. The problem is people get too senior in their career, too focused in one discipline, that they're not broad enough, and then they have families, they've got you know, a mortgage, and they can't afford to take a pay cut to go work in a different area. So work for a company that will allow you lateral moves and focus on that more than just riding the revenue management elevator to the top and making a little bit more money along the way. Because ultimately, if you want to be a chief commercial officer, you'll make a lot more money than a head at just revenue management.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think sometimes when you make career decisions like that, you got to bet on yourself. And sometimes it's not always financial, right? It's, you get offered a job with Sloan's company in, I'm not going to say a destination to not get in trouble, or you get offered a job in Southern California working for somebody else. Make sure you make the decision more than just the, you know, the proximity to the beaches in Big Bear. I mean, I think there's you got to bet on yourself. You know, and I think the industry will pay off when you do, definitely. So Neil, we're up against the hour. So man, comes back to you. Final word. What piece? What takeaway? This is big pressure, man. What takeaway do you have for everybody if they're interested in getting involved in the unsiloed world of commercial hospitality?
I think my two panelist colleagues have got a monopoly on the buzzwords and the best phrases, so I can't really add to that. But I mean, if I'd have been on a panel like this 10 years ago, it wouldn't have been as the sort of enthusiasm and just the risk taking. So I think, like Sloan says, I think being the guy in the room that says, do you know what, I don't mind doing something different. It paid off for me. I mean, sample survey of one, but knowing how to do different things, there's not too many people that do that, and taking a bet on yourself. So I'm coming across more and more people that are doing that. So I'd certainly encourage that. Get out of your comfort zone, because obviously things are evolving at a crazy pace. So and stop talking about it as revenue management, because that in itself sounds quite old-fashioned. It's optimization. It doesn't sound very dynamic and agile. It's a lot more than just managing in a functional capacity. So that's probably where I'd jump off.
No doubt. If the definition of revenue management is managing excess demand, you probably need to make sure that you're using a different definition, or you're a relatively limited scope in what you're dealing with. So, yeah, that's an amazing point. So, anyway, panelists, thank you so much. I think really interesting insights and great perspectives. 3 really cool and very unique perspectives. So, thank you guys. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Very cool, guys. Great conversation.
We're going to ask them to stick around for a little while, right? So we'll ask the panel to stick around and tell everybody what's happening next.
Well, what's happening next? We have Klaus waiting in his amazing suite in the hotel. Let's look at the clip and start the executive interview. Cool. Hi, Klaus. Good afternoon. You are on mute, huh?
Hey, everyone. Great conversations. Good afternoon. Good evening.
Welcome, Klaus. So we have all marveled at your background. So thank you very much. You look fantastic. For those that don't know Klaus, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit? First of all, Klaus has the title Chief Evangelist, and so Kelly, he's kind of encroaching on your space a little bit. I know that. At one time, your LinkedIn said revenue evangelist, and so. But Klaus, tell us a little bit about analytics evangelist. I'm sorry, that's right. I'm sorry, but Klaus, tell us a little bit about what that means. That obviously means something. So tell us what that's all about.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks a lot. I've had this for 5 years now, so I guess a lot of people do know kind of what evangelizing means. But it's exactly doing what we're doing here today. It's talking about the industry, having a dialogue with a number of people around the world in the industry, in the tech space, in the hospitality space, consultants, and anyone who really wants to sit down for a conversation. And then what I do, I distill the themes or the information that I find from these conversations we're having into themes, and then I bring those themes back to the industry in conversations, presentations, blog posts, LinkedIn, and any other means to get the message through. And I also take those themes internally into the company. I run strategy for ideas. I run the technology partnership division or function within ideas. And I also run kind of a new product development, early stage emerging product kind of area, which is a new area for us. So quite a different many hats that I have, but it all starts with evangelizing and finding themes and finding things that are happening in the next 5 to 7 years in the industry.
So, man, I think you just listened to the panel, and I think we all are really excited to hear your opinion. Quite frankly, you're another one of those people that we all, we kind of look forward to hearing from once in a while. So, what's your take on the whole sales, marketing, revenue management question?
Well, what can I say when you have Sloan, Neil, and Kelly on a panel? All great friends of mine and all very experienced, accomplished leaders, and we've gone through this journey all together over the last. Not saying how many years, but for a few years. But the way I break it down, I was in Cornell a couple months ago. Dave Roberts, who is one of the adjunct professors there, ex-head of revenue management at Marriott, is now at Cornell, and he invited me to come and talk to them. And what I said to them is, I think there is 4 things that are important for a person to progress and make a career. One is flexibility. You just have to pick up and put your hand up whenever people ask for projects or want to do something different or get out of your comfort zone. Flexibility is the first one. Curiosity, trying to do things different and trying to learn new things all the time. That's the second one. Luck for me is the third one. You have to be lucky, and I think everyone would be lying in this panel and everywhere else if we can't all say that we've been lucky either to work with certain people that mentored us or fall into certain roles that made it possible for us to be where we are, or do things that other people don't get exposed to. So luck is a big component of that. And the fourth one for me is ambition, because you have to be ambitious. You have to drive yourself. You have to do more than others expect you to do. And without ambition, you're not going to be able to do any of the things that you're probably striving to do. So all of these go together: flexibility, curiosity, luck, and ambition, to ultimately get you to wherever you want to be. And that journey will change along the way. So I always tell my kids who are 21 and 24, don't worry what you're learning today, because you're not going to figure it out until you're at least 30. And by that time, the job that you will have eventually will probably not even exist today. So keep your mind open.
It's amazing advice. You threw me for a loop. Mine are 26 and 30, and just recently came off my payroll, and so I think it's,
do they ever?
That's really good advice. At about 25, I told them that they needed to start figuring it out. So you're a little bit more understanding, a little more kind than I am. So Sloan, that really kind of goes back to a lot of things that you said, and in your comment about your annual review, right? Don't just look at that as a monetary thing, but look at that as a way to create opportunity for yourself and embrace those opportunities and be flexible and accept them. So Klaus, we're going to get back to the people thing and spend a lot of time on that, because I want to get you to kind of give some advice, but I also want to take advantage of you being here from the tech side and you run in that circle, you run with the tech visionaries, you know what people are working on and stuff like that. And I think we've all completely agreed. All of these skills are starting to merge into one. But how is the tech supporting it? Because the tech is kind of, there's revenue management tech, there's Delphi, there's ideas, but it's kind of like that's all still very siloed to a certain extent. So what's going on there?
Yeah, I kind of get annoyed, honestly, Scott, by the conversations about the hospitality industry, hotel industry being such a laggard and being so far behind, because I feel that's no longer as true as it was maybe 5 years ago. I do see a tremendous amount of innovation happening in the industry right now, and that's really, really exciting. And that's led by some very visionary leaders that come from a more broader background than maybe we've seen in the past. Sloan is definitely one of them, right? He's come from revenue management, has done the sales, the investment part, the M&A part, and is now CEO of a pretty large company. And there's others, right? Chris Silcock at Hilton, Monica at Loews, and many other leaders that are pushing the boundaries, and they're using technology very, very effectively to help them achieve their goals. So I am super excited about the innovation that I can see in the hospitality technology space, and I'm super excited about what that means for hospitality over the next 18 months. A couple of those are the whole move of technology to the cloud, increasing digitization of the customer journey, people using mobile phones, checking in, checking out. Hotel companies are investing in different ways of engaging with customers, making it much more real-time and personalized. And that drives a bigger use of personalization, a bigger ability of personalization. And that then allows us to merchandise very differently in the hospitality space over the next couple of years. So I feel there is a huge amount of investment going on, huge amount of innovation. Yes, we're a little bit behind compared to retail and others, but I feel that there's a enormous amount of innovation that's going to come into the industry over the next couple of years, 18 months.
And Kelly, I tell you, now let me put you on the spot a little bit, because you're kind of involved in a lot of that same stuff, right? But it's not all smashing atoms. In some cases, it's using technology to just, kind of streamline existing processes and some of that stuff. So that's what you guys do at ZS, right? You're on the edge of those things. So tell us a little bit about, what I know there are some things that are starting to consolidate that. What's happening?
Yeah, I mean, I like what Klaus had to say. I think, we possibly do give ourselves too hard of a time when we say we're laggards. I think the challenge is, though, that the core systems that we rely on, those essential selling systems, are so embedded in all of our processes and are really not as easy to update or replace with some of the latest cloud technology, et cetera. So that's where I think where we get challenged. But a lot of the work that we've been doing these days is thinking about then how do we sort of wrap around that existing technology, whether it's through APIs or even through some very robust automation type platforms that can replace the hands-on keyboards work that's needed to execute some of these complex workflows in hospitality. Sloan earlier talked about how do we streamline the work of our employees so that we need to rely on fewer of them. And my argument would be, that there's a huge opportunity today to take all that non-guest facing, non-human value add work off of the people so that they can focus on what they do best, which is thinking and strategizing, or really providing that very personalized service to guests. And so, to me, you can think beyond, we have to put a new system in place here, rip out technology and plug in something else. But really, how can we tie all of these systems together through some of this robotic process automation or other types of automation that removes the manual, just fingers on keyboards work and gets people back focused on what people should be doing. So I think there's tremendous opportunities today. So Klaus, I'm glad you made that point about
I do.
Point. Yeah.
So this morning I took a train from Frankfurt to Dortmund. I'm in Germany right now, right? I booked my entire journey on my phone with the train. The train continued to get delayed throughout the day, and Deutsche Bahn, although they had a massive problem with delays, they still managed to keep me updated on the mobile phone constantly. And usually before I even got the announcement on the train, I already got the updates on the arrival times on my phone. Then arrived here at the Hilton at the Hampton in Dortmund earlier today, and I used my digital key, and I had already checked in. The entire journey was just facilitated and done through my phone. And I've done that over the last 3 weeks that I've been traveling across Europe. So when you think about all these things that need to happen to enable that interaction that has changed over the last 5 years, it's incredible. And the millions and millions of dollars have been spent to enable that. And it's here. The future, we're not talking about these things anymore for in the next 3 or 4 years. You can actually do all these things today and use your mobile device very, very effectively. And what that means is it gives companies the ability to track you, collect your data if you allow them to do that, and then merchandise and personalize the experience even more. So the data that's being collected through these digital touch points and the digitization process is going to be hugely beneficial for hotel companies going forward, and for commercial leaders, of course.
Exactly. So, excuse me. Let's keep talking a little bit about the tech stack. Initially there was no such thing as a tech stack, right? It was enterprise software. Then there was, a PMS, and there were a couple of revenue management systems and some booking engines. And so it started to come together, right? And we're building this, but up until a certain point, it was like there were pieces and you needed a whole recipe. And now it seems like there's solutions that are basically being that can be injected in the middle of it all, that are almost agnostic to the stuff that already exists. And I think of, payment platform layers, for example, or, personalization that's happening agnostic to what the booking engine is and stuff like that. And so where's that going to go next, Klaus? Is it just, I don't think many people would be able to walk into an auto parts store and buy all the parts and put together a car themselves. So at what point does it become, that's great that we can do this, but no one can figure it out anymore?
And I'll answer that in a moment. But I also find it interesting that companies like Ashford, right, which is Remington linked, or MCR, another hotel company in the US, are actually investing in the technology, in the tech stack, and they're active players in funding some of these companies that we're seeing emerging now. So that's another interesting part that I wanted to add on. So it's not just the the startup or the technology world evolving. It's also hotel companies actively giving money and funding some of these companies. I think, Scott, the key differentiator we'll see over the next 2 years or the next couple of years, people are not going to buy software anymore. They're buying capabilities, right? And we can already see that because software is broken down into its components. You will be talking about what capabilities do I want and how can I package these capabilities together to make them work for me in my specific environment that I'm operating in. Do I have certain brands? Do I have certain type of hotels? Do I have certain types of users that need to use these capabilities very differently? I give you an example. Somebody who's an owner operator or franchise hotel for a very small property on the roadside in the US, who doesn't have time for revenue management, uses a revenue management system or product or technology very, very differently than Sloan used to when he was a revenue manager for a very, very complex and very high revenue producing hotel. Right? We have to acknowledge, and we have acknowledged that there is many, many different users and many, many different scenarios. And we are going to see more the purchase of capabilities across the board rather than software. And the conversation is turning towards what are the capabilities that I need for my brands, my users, my use cases, and then who has the opportunity or the capabilities to put these together and package them in a way that I can get the best value out of it. And that's going to be the biggest shift.
Okay. So Sloan, let me ask you again, you're in the position to make the decision, right? So to me, it's one of two things. We've got all these great choices and we can build the perfect tech stack, if you will, let's keep it in that realm, or it's overwhelming and we can go to a brand and we can get a, fully functioning, we know it's well integrated and stuff like that. Do you think this leads, put on your futurist hat, or at least your tomorrowist hat, Kelly, and look forward. Do you think it leads to more or less branding? Even look at Europe, for example, where it's still largely independent, or look at APAC, for example, where it's still largely independent. Where do you think it goes? Which way?
I don't think the tech stack necessarily drives branding decisions. If you're making a 30-year decision, most franchise agreements are 30 years, liquidated damages, and you're giving 10% of your income off the top to the brand. You're making that simply based off a CRS, a PMS, and a RMS. You're very short-sighted. So, what I'd actually like to see, this is not going to happen, by the way. There's too much legacy CapEx that's been spent by the brands. But I would like to see, just like we're unbundling the rooms product and other things, I'd like to see an uncoupling of technology from the brands themselves and have a best-in-class tech stack that is agnostic to the industry. Now, if you're a group of independent hotels, you can still do that today. There are providers that are, obviously Ideas, I think, is a best-in-class revenue management software that integrates with other things. But having a tech stack that is vertically integrated, we have that at our independents today. We operate independents in addition to branded hotels. I don't think you go make a branded decision because of the tech stack. The tech stack should be something that you should be choosing to align with managers, or if you're an individual owner operator, you can align with technology providers to do that. And then, before I jump off, I would end with, if you allow me to digress a little bit from the tech, because I've got to get off. But the other two things that we didn't really necessarily talk about, but I just wanted to touch on, is that one, I would suggest to everyone, in addition to mentor programs, choosing the right people to work for, having the right incentives, that ultimately having a lot of friendship and having a lot of key relationships in commercial is important. I've known Klaus and Kelly for over a decade. We all sat on the HSMAI Revenue Management Advisory Board. I think then we looked a lot younger. Klaus mentioned Monica and Chris and David, and there's a whole group of us that have grown up together in commercial that you're going to see a swell of other C-suite beyond just me or Keith Barr or Chris Silcock. And I think go out of your way to build those friendships and seek out thought leaders like Kelly and Klaus and Neil and Scott and develop those friendships. And you can do that through organizations and conferences. And the second thing I would say is that Klaus is absolutely right. I think the most successful commercial leaders, and I don't mean to digress from the tech too much, but curiosity I have found is one of the best attributes that a commercial leader can have. And what I mean by that is, asking what, how, when, wanting to learn, inquisitive curiosity in an empathetic way, not asking why does my star report suck? It is real curiosity. And I think that life learner mentality is important. And I think Klaus hit on the head that is a key attribute that a person has to have. But sorry, Scott, I just wanted to hit that before I got off. But I think tech stack is going to continue to evolve. And hopefully at some point, we'll just say we have one tech component that is CRS, PMS, POS, RMS, sales automation, all in one. And it's the best in class. And it doesn't matter what brand or independent you are. That's where I'd like to see us evolve to. So that just like if I want to franchise my hotel with Marriott, I don't use them per se for my tech stack. I go to a, company A and have this best in class, and it doesn't tie me to a 30-year franchise agreement that has liquidated damages. So anyway, I think I came full circle on you. Sorry to do that.
But. No, that's a fantastic answer, to be honest with you, because I think the opportunity to unbundle it, right, would be great, right? In some cases, we don't need all the capabilities they make us pay for. In other cases, the stuff we get doesn't do enough. So, yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, I would argue for those of you that say, well, Marriott, Hilton, IHG, et cetera, have best-in-class central thing. Well, you're paying a ton of fees to the brands. So there's a reason they've got all this historical, and I would argue against whether that's best-in-class, but it's expensive if you break down your franchise statement. So
for sure.
Anyway, it's great seeing all you, and thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thank you, Sloan. Thank you very much. And Kelly, you made the statement about the legacy systems, right? And the investment that's in those legacy systems, therefore the amount that's involved in undoing any of it, right? And so we tend, Klaus, as you mentioned, we just kind of keep putting new layers on top of it. We never,
I see changing
the foundation.
Yeah, no, I see it changing though. I mean, the recent announcement by Amadeus and Marriott that they're going to work on replacing the Marriott CRS, right, which has been publicly announced a couple months back. I think that is a big indicator that companies are starting to look at different avenues, right? Marriott has always been very, very fond of their Marsher CRS system that's been in place for, I think, maybe 50, 60 years, and they've come to the realization that there is maybe a more value by partnering up with somebody like Amadeus, right? So I don't think anything is set in stone. I think we'll see, there's always these trends, right? The pendulum swings back and forth between do I build it or do I buy it? I think the most important thing is what is the best value that people can get from their technology. And I think the key to that is buy capabilities rather than software, right? And find the person that goes along on the journey with you, or the provider.
Yeah, I loved your statement about curiosity. I think we've all kind of chimed in on that too. I think that, as we talked about things evolving, Steve Rubin mentioned that the digital marketers would possibly be the leaders the next time around, because that's going to be the current emerging skill set. And I would say, a curious person would be on top of that, right? So that's, I think that's really good testament.
I think all of us are representative of that, right? If I look across the room here virtually, between Kelly, Neil, and myself, I mean, we've had all numerous roles that have given us lots of opportunity. And I think the reason why we had these numerous roles is because we've always put our hands up, and we've always asked ourselves what else is out there that we might want to explore, right? So it's one of the four things that I feel are critical for a well-rounded professional and a leader to have.
Absolutely. Yeah, because there's a little bit of it, and you mentioned luck. Some of it's the right place at the right time. Some of it's raising your hand for the right project, and then the sky's the limit after that in some cases. So Klaus, let me kind of wrap it up a little bit. We're kind of getting towards the end, but the second half of this question was, what would be the right way for an aspiring leader? So, man, just share a little bit of your wisdom with us, right? Take a look at somebody. Let's first start with someone kind of starting out in their career. If this is an attractive potential career path, what advice would you give them? Let's say one of those two kids told you they want to be in the hotel business. First of all, God help you. And second of all,
I'm trying to tell them, but they don't want to listen. But no, they're not.
Mine, they heard enough from the backseat of the car. They knew they wanted nothing to do with it. I mean, what advice would you give?
I would say, start out where you're passionate, where you're passionate at the moment. If it's in the hotel industry, find a place where you're passionate. And then see what else is out there. I did hotel school when I started when I was 15, and then I worked in F&B for a while because I loved the F&B space. Then I moved into the front desk and reception because I loved that, because I wanted to become a general manager. And then I actually realized I didn't want to become a general manager, and I kind of found this niche of revenue management and pricing. And I was always passionate about what I was doing, but I was always thinking about, is there something else that I could be doing instead, or I want to get my hands into. So I would say, well, start somewhere in hospitality if you're passionate about the industry. Find your place, and then look around and see what other areas are out there that you would like to explore. And then, as Sloan said, don't ask for a raise, ask for a placement somewhere else. Ask for things that you could do, either as a promotion or as a lateral move. And just put your hands up for projects and get involved in things that might be a little bit outside your current remit, and then find the people that you want to work for too. And I've had the luck a few times that I've had amazing people that I worked for that took me under their wings and helped me grow to the next level, either next level up or 2 levels up. And those 2 or 3 people were instrumental to my career. Without them, I wouldn't be where I am today. So you also need to search out the leaders you want to work for and the leaders that can mentor you and help you find the path for yourself.
So, okay, now kind of just a final question. Let's fast forward that 10 years. I'm in one of the commercial disciplines. My career's okay. Like, I'm not minding my career. How do you future-proof it? What's the next step?
I don't know. Become an evangelist.
I like
it. Neil is sitting there. He's like, yes.
I was just thinking back to your 4-point plan: flexibility, curiosity, luck, and ambition. So
that's right. How do you future-proof any career, Scott? I mean, it's by always trying to stay up to date with what's happening. And doing those things we talked about, right? It's like Neil has had many different roles and ideas. He's always put his hand up and said, "Hey, why not? I'm going to try and explore this, and I'm gonna do as best a job as I can in whatever I'm asked to do." And the same is true for Kelly, right? You future-proof your personal brand and your professional development by staying ahead or on top of the curve in whatever area it's going in, right? I was a front office manager in Paris, in New York, at the Intercontinental in New York, and I found out that there's a way of pricing differently, and I built my own program to do that and introduced dynamic pricing because I was interested in it, and that led me to a career in revenue management. And it wasn't because anyone told me that I should do revenue management. It didn't even exist as a discipline. It was just something that I was interested in, and I found out that I can play around with price and demand. And that just became a passion of mine. So future-proofing your career is being curious and being ambitious and being flexible and having some luck.
There you go. All right.
I don't know, Neil, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think I just love the idea of the luck piece, because I think that goes back to sort of authenticity and humility as well. And my story was very similar. My general manager I worked for at the time in London went on a course, came back, and I was like an 18-year-old kid and doing a part-time job while I was at college. He said, "I've just been on this course. I've just found out about yield management." And I thought I was like a rooms division manager at the time. I thought, what's he talking about? This isn't going to go anywhere. And then he said, I think you could do this. I think, we're going to change your job. And then a couple of weeks later, I went on holiday and read Robert Cross. And I was obviously the saddest guy on the beach, because I was like 17, 18 reading a Robert Cross tome on the beach. And that was it. It was just pure luck. And I thought, this is amazing. It's so transferable to other industries. And I think over time you begin to make your own luck. But I think, coming back to that 4-point plan, I think that's definitely true. I think, and also knowing when not to put your hand up sometimes, because Klaus is quite good at that, saying, you could do this, you've done all these different things. It's like saying, hang on, let me make a success of this. And then, so I think it's just tempering your own ambition. And I think that's a good recipe for success, that kind of 4-point plan.
Cool. Kelly, final word.
No, I mean, Klaus said it. Klaus and Neil both said it best. You just, so I'll just put a period at the end of that sentence too.
There you go. Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. You made a good point, right? It's having a little bit of focus, right? Not saying yes to everything, but I think being willing to step up is I would tell you that the couple of places where I saw my career take off, it was because I accepted responsibility. Sometimes I wasn't the first person offered, but I was the one that took it, and it worked out. So yeah, definitely true. All right, Enzo.
Hey, guys, that was great. I mean, I'm here listening, learning, so much things to do. Great visionary. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Klaus. Really cool, your points. Thanks, Kelly. Thanks, Neil. And really looking forward, guys, to, share more inspirational stuff with you. So I would like to get in again back my colleagues, my friends, Diego, Federica, Chris, and Scott. Oh, so many people there. And just to wrap, and we are at the end, and like to share some words from each of you. Harry?
Well, this was a shot of inspiration for any of the young people out there in the industry wanting to move forward. It was really well done. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Chris, you back?
Yeah, what a amazing discussion. Wow, some really fantastic quotes. I think we have to digest it a little bit, and I think I'll rewatch the episode and make sure I got it all, because there was so much really valuable and interesting stuff there. So thank you everybody for contributing.
Cool.
Wow.
All right, at this point I will say thank you, Klaus, Neil, Kelly, and thank you, guys.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Klaus.
Thank you,
Neil. Bye. Bye.
Bye. All right, so it's only us now. It's at the end. What was the famous song from the Doors? This is the end, So before we say hello, let me share my screen again, because this is the end of the first episode, not the end of the series. We still have 7 episodes and words. The next one is going to be the 21st of April, and this episode is going to be sponsored by Hot Insight. The title of this episode is How to Be Competitive in 2022. Right, we got already some inspiration point from Klaus, Neil, Sloan, and Kelly. But sure, we will have more to discuss on this next episode. Can you do me a favor, Federica? Maybe you can copy paste the link of the event page and share in the comments, so anyone is still there. I still see a lot of people connected, so make sure you are tuning in also for the next episode, right? So 21st of April, 5 p.m. Central European time. What to say, Diego? You had some trouble. Let's see now if you can say something, if the audio is back. No, nothing. I think a problem is not the Wi-Fi, it's your headset. Maybe you have to talk now. No, nothing.
Do you hear me now?
Yeah,
Yes.
we do. That's great.
Good.
Finally.
Hello, Diego.
It was something related first with the Wi-Fi and now with the AirPods. So sorry for the troubles. So first of all, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to have another year with all of you. And so I really appreciated that. And as Chris has said, it was a wonderful panel. I mean, I'm going to review it because there are a lot of takeaways in the panel. It was massive, and I take one big takeaway. You need to you need to have leaders in every single position that they are managing teams. Wherever you need, maybe it's a revenue manager, maybe it's a commercial guy, but they need to have a leadership skills. If not, they are going to failure. And then the formula of success: flexibility, curiosity, lack, and ambitions. So this is probably one of the best takeaways of the day.
It's a kind of algorithm we have to
Yeah.
inject into the brain of people, like.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
actually, I'm happy to see some nice comments from Madalena. Wow, I really enjoyed the session. I'm a hospitality student. I also attended this event last year. Great. Thank you,
Nice.
Madalena. That was our goal, to inspire and try to share, great experience from great leaders. So thank you, Scott. Your last word, Scott, just to wrap, just because you've been managing amazingly this panel and executive interview.
Well, thank you. I tell you what, I would say that if you enjoyed today, make sure you follow the series. Make sure you sign up for the others. I think you'll find that the agenda we put together for this year is amazing, and more of this stuff to come. So thank you guys for all your hard work. I mean, I think that I get to show up today and have fun, but you guys do a lot of work in between. So thank you.
Thank you. Federica, today you are the only woman apart Kelly, so I think we should give some space now to your voice.
Thank you. Just want to say that this kickoff was great, fantastic, and a lot of keynotes. And I really, really appreciate the fact that apart from who should lead the commercial team, and that my point of view is revenue management, but I think it's very important what we said about the soft skills and the experience in the other departments. And this is something that myself had to understand some years ago when I was only, based on data and data numbers. At some point, making the experience in the other departments really open your mind, your vision, and your approach. So I think this is really key, and I'm happy that it has been said, together with so many other inputs that I think are very, very important. So, wow, what a great start.
Cool. And my big question, no one answered. Henry, who is going to pay the bill between the sales, the revenue, and the marketing guy at the end?
It will not be the revenue guy.
He's the one making calculation. They'll leave the people on the table pay the rest.
I think it's going to be the sales guy because he has some budget for that.
Yeah. For sure.
All right. So once again, next episode, 21st of April. No, sorry, it's 21st of April. Yeah, it's the 21st of April. Yeah, so I'm getting older. How to be competitive in 2022. Make sure you are going to tune in, and I'll see you in a few weeks. Thank you, guys. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye very much.